Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third installment of the Brown Bag series, sponsored by the Department of Psychiatry and the Office of DICE. We're excited to have you all with us today, as we are every week, but we are excited to have an excellent panel from our AANHPI group, and for those of you that aren't familiar with AANHPI, you should see the slides before you, the Asian American and Native Hawaiian / Pacific Islander. So I have to tell you a fun fact. Amanda Lai, who is on our panel, actually helped me understand where the NH part came from. And that was instituted when Joe Biden became president. So that's a fairly new term within, during his presidency. So we now refer to the group as the AANHPI, but I think they also refer to them, others will refer to them as AAPI. So on that note, I am going to hand things over to the AANHPI group to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about them. We'll start with Amanda Lai.
Aikaho. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Lai. I am the Arts and Communications Specialist in the Department of Psychiatry. I am American-born with a Chinese heritage, specifically from Taishan, China, in the southeast coast, colloquially known as the home. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Thank you. Colloquially known as the first home of overseas Chinese. I had greeted everyone earlier in Toisanese, which is a very unique and specific dialect of the Cantonese languages in the southeast. So the Taishan Toisan community has made up a predominant percentage of Chinese immigrants up until the 80s and 90s, and has a really major impact on the development of America's railways and the rise of Chinatowns in the US. So thank you for having me. I'll also add that Annabel had brought in some Asian snacks over on the right side, so feel free to grab them. There's some guava candy, some coconut jellies, rice crackers, and pineapple cakes. So a lot of the ingredients should be written in English, but just takes some note of if you have allergies. And I'll pass it over to Chinh.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chinh Huynh. I'm a mental health therapist here in the Department of Psychiatry. As a way of introducing myself, I'm going to share a little bit about my history and where it came from. I think it will provide a lot of context as to how this group has been really helpful and beneficial. And so I'm born in Canada. Both of my parents are from the south of Vietnam. I share up here, so the yellow flag is actually the flag for the south of Vietnam. And I think it was only a flag for maybe 30 years before the current flag, which is for the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, which is the red flag with the yellow star in it. I share that because both my parents are from the south of Vietnam. My mom was a refugee, and my dad immigrated through more traditional means, and they both immigrated to Canada, Montreal specifically. And so the flag represents, the three lines represents the kind of three sections of Vietnam: North Vietnam, Central Vietnam, and South Vietnam. And so, like I said, both my parents are from the south of Vietnam. And I think an interesting piece of that culture is that most Vietnamese immigrants that you would meet that immigrated at that time, right, would be from the south of Vietnam. My mom immigrated around 1975, which is the fall of Saigon, when America withdrew from the Vietnam War. And so I think a really interesting piece of that is, right, that the Vietnam that currently exists to my parents and to my grandparents, their Vietnam doesn't really exist anymore. And so that's been an interesting piece of kind of exploring my cultural heritage. On this slide here in the corner, I have a picture that I found of that documented kind of a historical documentation of the boat peoples that escaped Vietnam. And so my understanding is my mom was one of those. She ended up in a refugee camp in Hong Kong before immigrating to Canada. Both of my parents were able to get sponsorship to Canada because of Vietnam's history of being French colonized meant that they both spoke French, and so that gave them kind of a leg up in terms of immigrating to Canada, and how they ended up in Montreal, which is where I was born. And then my immediate family circle, so me, my sister, and my parents, we moved to Vancouver, the other side of Canada, when I was about 8 years old. And so the languages that were spoken in my home were initially Vietnamese and French, and then I didn't learn English until I was about 8. And so here is some pictures from my childhood. So on the left-hand side, this is a picture of me with my dad's side of the family. So all of my cousins and uncles at the time. I'm the youngest baby on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side picture is a picture of me and my cousins celebrating Vietnamese Lunar New Year. I'm one of the ones in yellows, and I think I'm holding a little red envelope. And so this kind of illustrates a little bit of what it was like for me growing up, being surrounded by extended family, and they were my kind of connection to Vietnam at the time. And then more recently, I was able to have a really special trip back to Vietnam with my dad and some extended family. And so again, learning to bridge that difference between what I've heard about in my childhood and how different it is there now. Thank you. Looks like my mic died. So as I was saying, an important piece of the heritage, I think, is just the food and how important the food is in terms of the culture. There's different foods specific to each area, and just really interesting to learn how different recipes actually often came out of the wartime in terms of what was available for ingredients and the cooking techniques that had to develop around survival, and how that evolved and kind of influenced the area.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm Annabel Fu. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry. On the upper left side, you can see the traditional character for my family surname. I was born in Taiwan, so I'll include a little map on the right side, which is, if folks don't know, it's a small but mighty country located off the southeast coast of China. My family came here when I was 5 years old to look for sort of better opportunities. And the majority of my family is actually, extended family is still in Taiwan. So a pretty large extended family is just my more immediate families here in the US. I have fond memories growing up, attending Chinese school on Saturdays and doing calligraphy classes or traditional Chinese dances. One of my favorite meals is dim sum. So for folks who don't know about dim sum, it's kind of like a Chinese brunch filled with little dishes of delicacies and small dishes, which if I could have brought dim sum here today, I would have, but please enjoy our snacks instead. And in the middle, I included a picture of a pig because I was born the year of the pig. For those who don't know or not familiar with the Chinese zodiac, there's a sort of 12-year cycle with each Lunar New Year is dedicated to an animal. And the year of the pig, our personalities are described as kind, open, honest, giving, maybe some reckless impulsivity and naivety, but we'll just ignore that part. And in addition, each zodiac animal has one that's, another animal that they're not really compatible with or in conflict with. And so for the pig, the zodiac animal is the snake. So snakes are described as wise, but private, suspicious, paranoid, jealous. So kind of the opposite of a pig. And my brother was born in the year of the snake. Oh. So you might see where this is going. When we're growing up and we're having sibling fights, and my parents would be like, why are you guys fighting? Me, as the older sibling and being wiser, would say, it's because he's a snake, I'm a pig, and we're destined to fight. That's why. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about my background.
I think pigs are known to be very smart, and you're very smart. Yes. Okay. All righty. So take this. All right. Can you folks hear me okay? All right. Okay. So, Sawadika, my name is Marie Hasitavej-Bilinski. I am a Thai American. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and I work in the telepsychiatry department. I've worked in geriatric psychiatry here at the U of R for 26 years. So you'll see my full name, Thai name up there. You'll see it's written in Thai. Marie, when pronounced in Thai, is Mali, which means jasmine. Laksana is my middle name, which means very special. And Hasitavej means doctor who smiles and laughs a lot. And that was a name that was given to my maternal grandfather by the king back in my grandfather's time, and he is granted very old. There's another story about that. But anyway, during the early to mid 1900s, people did not have last names. They were called Joe the farmer or Karen the seamstress, whatever. And so the king really liked the idea of last names. He was influenced by his travels in Europe and so on. So he started to give people last names. So that was the last name that he gave to my maternal grandfather, who was a physician. This is the map of Asia, and just to put in perspective, Thailand is right there. Sorry, I'm got a wiggly thumb, but Thailand is right there. It's in Southeast Asia. And here's a bigger picture of Thailand, and it's called Land of the Free because it's the only country in Southeast Asia that was not colonized by any European country. And at the time when the British and the French wanted to colonize, the king said, well, we know that we can't fight you, you'll win the war, so we'll give you part of our land, which is now Laos and Cambodia. This is the Thai flag. The red represents the blood that was spilt to maintain its independence. White represents purity and Buddhism, which is the main religion in Thailand, but there are all other kinds of religions in Thailand as well. And blue symbolizes the Thai monarchy. These are just some slides that are coming up, are just a day in the life of where my parents, they both are from Thailand, and the Chao Phraya River the waterways are everywhere. So it's very common to see homes with canoes. This is kind of a common scene there. Temples are in every village, and all the people who live in the village support the temples. The monks live there, they're brought food there. People who give up their babies would leave their babies there. I mean, just it's kind of like a, I don't know, a safety place for the villagers. This is a floating market. This is the Bangkok version of Wegmans. You go there and you stand along the side there and you just bargain for whatever foods and vegetables and meals and that it is that you want. They also have regular grocery stores as well. And this is just a sampling of some of the Thai food, which actually this was taken in a local restaurant here, which was very good Thai food here in Rochester. So, and then here are what's called water taxis. These are boats. And you will see them a lot up and down the river and on the canals, because the people who live along the canals use it for transportation to not only run their errands and that sort of thing, but also these boats carry mail. There can be some banking that can be done, deliveries, all that kind of stuff. So their version of Amazon. This is my maternal grandparents. My grandfather was a physician as well, and back in his time, polygamy was legal. So he had 4 wives. My grandmother is the first wife, and my mother is the offspring of the first wife. So he had 4 wives. And this is not a great picture, unfortunately, but anyway, this is where my mother grew up. Here are some pictures of his children, but also some of his wives, and some of the wives are actually sisters. This is my paternal grandparents, Dr. Hasitavej, and his wife is the second wife. My grandmother's the second wife. He had 14 children. He also had 4 wives. So I have 8 grandmothers. I have about 30 aunts and uncles, and I have hundreds of cousins, and we could fill up a town. This is my mother. Her name is Yupa, which means youthful woman. And this is my father, Rasmi, which means ray of the sun. He became a physician as well. They both immigrated to the United States. And my father specialized, he was a pediatrician, but he specialized in working with special needs back in the day. In the 70s, they called the intellectually and developmentally disabled, mentally retarded. But anyway, he wrote a book for lay folks and how to cope with and live with problems of mental retardation. This book was designed to help caregivers, parents of those who have children with these disorders. And then along came me and my brother, and we were born in Massachusetts. And so that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for sharing bits and pieces of you and your history with us. So I have a few questions here that we already have in advance, so I'll just go ahead and ask those, and feel free to answer any of you, any and all. So the first question is, when and why did your group get started?
Well, thank you for asking that, Chanel. And just to give a little bit of history, I think about 3 years ago, if folks remember, there was shootings in Atlanta, Georgia, where the gunman killed 8 individuals, 6 of them of women of Asian descent. And at the time, when they were giving the briefing of sort of what was happening or motive, what we got was that it was because this guy had a sex addiction, and he was having a bad day. And so I was just incredulous that at first I was like, is this just a really bad joke? I realized this was just racism and misogyny at its worst. The next day I got up and had to go to work and had to deal with sort of all these feelings that I was feeling. Maybe it was because it was the middle of the pandemic, so there was more reportings and visibility of anti-Asian hate crimes, in addition to sort of the stress of the pandemic and everything. And I just thought, you know what, I'm in work a lot of hours, and I feel like I need to have a safe place to process this with people who can understand maybe what I'm going through. Took some time to look for one via the web, found nothing, and decided to reach out to our psychiatry DICE group to just say, you know, is there something where, or a group or some way that I can sort of process some of my feelings and thoughts. And then that was the start of our support group.
I want to thank you for starting this support group. It was really brave of you to do that. And so thank you.
Okay, our next question. We'd like to hear from each of you on this one, on why you became interested in joining this support group.
Well, I wanted to attend for the same reasons that Annabel did, but during the peak of during the pandemic and so forth, and then there were these killings. One of the first murders happened in San Francisco, and I looked in the news, and it was an elderly gentleman who was murdered. And when I looked at the name, I recognized that it was a Thai name. I'm going to start crying. And it was a Thai man who was murdered. And he looked a lot like my father, and he was his age. And so, like Annabel, I was incredulous, I was scared, I was angry. There's that stereotype of, you know, all Asians look alike, exactly alike, and that sort of thing. And just not to say that violence against the Chinese or being blamed for the pandemic was okay, because obviously it was not. But it was just this flagrant violence towards Asians in general. And so seeing a picture of his daughter prostrated on the ground when she discovered that her father was murdered over something senseless like this was really a main motivator for me to go to the support group.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Marie. Really, like my colleagues, I was also really in the midst of the pandemic, really felt like I needed a space to just talk with peers that understood a lot of the cultural intricacies around being Asian American, and also being the child of immigrants. So I think I also have a very similar story to a lot of my colleagues here.
Yeah, I think for me, well, I think when Annabelle suggested the group, I had the notion that it would be beneficial, but I don't think I was able to really anticipate how beneficial. Um, I think reflecting back on like my history and my upbringing, right? My parents worked really hard to get me to try to assimilate as much as possible. And so that's always been kind of an orientation in my childhood. And I think it makes it, yeah, I guess it made it harder for me to connect back to my roots. And there's something about this space, both like the familiarity and the differences that just, I don't know, contributes to a sense of belonging that I think I struggled to put into words.
I'll just add on, I didn't envision some sort of ongoing group. At that moment, it was just, I just want to gather with folks and process this. And there was really a few of us that thought, we like this and we want to keep going with it. And that's really where things kind of took off from there. So, and thank you to my friends and colleagues for sharing. So,
How do you all recruit members?
Yeah, I can answer this. So just piggybacking off of what Annabelle said, in the midst of the pandemic and resulting rise in anti-Asian discrimination, we found that a lot of our colleagues in psychiatry and even outside our department were really looking for a space where they could debrief and discuss how they're feeling. So I think this group really developed very organically. Since starting this group, we've also had the chance to network with other organizations at the university during events and seminars. And also in addition, we also grew our group through a lot of more traditional means, such as newsletters and different forms of outreach.
I'll just add on that our group is very open and flexible. Some folks are coming every month on a regular basis. Other folks kind of join in as needed. We're just there to kind of support each other in whatever way we can. So,
I know the theme is safe spaces, and I have to say that we've really created such a safe space with our group, to the point where we've been able to evolve and gotten as far as we have. I mean, who would have thought, I would not have thought that we would be sitting here talking about an affinity group when we got started a few years ago. And it has to do with the fact that we were very cognizant about making sure that it was a safe space. So I wanted to.
Thank you.
Make that known.
Thank you. Our next question. What are some of the topics of discussion that you felt safe discussing in this support group?
I can take this one also. I feel like we've really had conversations on a variety of topics, haven't we? Related to the AANHPI experience, it's really varied from our experiences with microaggressions, our relationships with family across the lifespan, and really a lot more. Personally, I felt safe talking about caretaking, language barriers, and the need for acting as an interpreter for my family. Not sure if other folks would like to chime in.
Yeah, I think going on as long as we have, right? It's been both some more lighthearted topics like food and some heavier topics. I think some of the themes that stuck out for me, right? Similarities and differences in terms of like that immigrant experience or the immigrant parent experience. and the idea of being a kind of like a third culture kid. So, right, not quite really belonging here, but when we visit back to home countries, also not feeling like we belong there as well. And yeah, that sense of similarity in those experiences.
And I guess I'll just add on that some things that have helped me process in this group include sort of my losing a little bit touch of my Asian identity over years for various factors. And so kind of processing that and thinking about how to get back in touch with my roots. The other thing that I think it's been really helpful for me to have a safe space to talk about, because I'm a relatively pretty private person, is my husband is not Asian, and so my kids are biracial. We have an interracial family, and it comes with lots of benefits, but also some emotionally painful moments when my family experienced racism. So.
One of the things that was really helpful for me to discuss was being a child of immigrants. And I'm very acculturated into white America. And I know that that's part of my identity. And like some of my other colleagues and friends here, my Asian part, my Thai part has been dormant. And one of the things that's been really painful for me growing up is being treated like a foreigner simply because of my almond-shaped eyes and golden skin. And I'm not seen as American. And being grown up with that kind of lens placed on me all the time was incredibly difficult. I also didn't have peers to talk to about it. We were typically the only Thais or Asians in our town, in our city, whatever. And so I found the support group a medium where I could really share freely what it's like to deal with that, but also what it's like being, you know, a child of immigrant family, of immigrant parents and so forth. So I found that to be incredibly healing to have this group in that way.
Thank you. Our next question. As your group developed, did you consult with anyone or any other groups?
Yes, so our affinity group kind of developed organically as well. As we got to know each other better, and some of the benefits of a safe space is feeling empowered. So as we became more empowered, the affinity group started to develop, and we would go to workshops in the community, Asian American type workshops, seminars, even some seminars that were sponsored by Senator Jeremy Kumi, which I don't know if you know who he is, but he's South Indian American and his wife is Chinese. She actually is a physician here at the U of R. And so we started doing that. We knew more people, just connecting and networking throughout the university. And so that's kind of how it developed. So I would have to say it just kind of developed organically. I don't know if any of you else want to add anything, but.
Yeah, I'll just also add briefly. I think our support group, quote unquote, really started at first in psychiatry, but we found that folks outside our department also were interested in participating and learning more. So really it grew from that as well.
I also wanted to add that there's a slide up that says special thanks to, and it's not in any particular order, and I hope you folks will be able to read it okay, but these are the folks, and there are more, I'm sure I probably forgot some of them, but they took the time out of their busy schedule to meet with us, to share their experience of how they developed their affinity group or what's happening in OEI. There was a Black physicians affinity group as well who met with us, and they were tag teaming. They were so busy. They met during the lunch hour and they were tag teaming. So like one doc would meet with us and he'd say, okay, Jerome, I got to see this patient now. Can you take over? And then Jerome would take over. And they would just, I mean, this is just kind of an example of how devoted all these people were in meeting with us, and several meetings as well. So we wanted to pay special thanks to them because they were really integral in helping us grow.
It just reminds me when I mentioned first kind of looking on the website and trying to see if there were any sort of similar groups out there. I really couldn't find any. But through this experience, there's a lot of things happening across the university that we might not be blasted in, emails and things like that, but it's happening. And people are passionate about it. They are advocates for it, and they want to collaborate.
Thank you. All right, our next question. We have a few more here, so I'll try and pick the ones that'll get us to the end. So let's see here. In your opinion, what are the benefits of having a safe space in your immediate work environment, department, and URMC as a whole?
Empowerment, obviously. I think in the immediate work environment, if you don't feel accepted by your coworkers because of stereotyping, racism, microaggressions, whatever, you're going to stay quiet, you're going to hide under the radar, you're just going to do your work, you're not going to bring up any issues, a whole ream of things. And so the benefit of having a safe space in the workplace, there's reams of benefits, obviously. When you're empowered, you feel not only accepted but respected, you work harder, you bring up issues, you make the program work better, and that sort of thing. And then I think that gets translated into, in our case, the psych department, where now you have more allies, you have people, you feel more, I don't know, I keep saying the word empowered, but, bringing up issues that impact the psych department and then so on into the university. So that's kind of like my brief description of that. Any wanted to elaborate on that? I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So, thank you, Chin. So one of the things that happened was after I got married, I adopted my husband's name, lovingly so I was called Marie Bilinski. So Hasitavej disappeared. And it wasn't until I got involved with this whole endeavor and with this group that I said, you know what, I'm not going to hide my name anymore and learn to be proud of the name Hasitavej. Hasitavej is difficult to pronounce. People have a hard time spelling it. And growing up, it was just a source of ridicule. People couldn't pronounce the name, so they called me House of Cabbage, House of Tosis, Hasitatsi, so on and so forth. And after a while, my name to me just seemed like, this is a royal pain in the butt. I'm just like, so what evolved from being with this group and feeling better about myself and being more empowered was, I'm not going to hide my name anymore, hence, which is why I have my full name, presented in this presentation today. Now, I'll spare you all, when you refer to me, you don't have to call me Marie Hasitavej, Marie Laksana Hasitavej-Bilinski, you just call me Marie. But that's one of the things that had happened as a result, was I wasn't going to hide my name anymore.
I think to add to that, for me, the shift has been gradual. I think this group has helped me kind of explore the impact that the model minority myth has had on me, and I think the idea that it's, being invisible feels safe and comfortable. And so I think this group has really helped me in my own personal journey of trying to take up more space and advocate for myself and feel safe and comfortable enough to do that.
Thank you for sharing that, Chin. And I'll just add on, we just have to have realistic, honest conversations that racism happens at work. And we are at work a lot of hours a week. And even if it might be more subtle, more microaggressions, the impact is still harmful, at least psychologically, if not physically. And most folks, at least in my experience, just want a space to feel heard. And that's really what this place is for, so.
Have you all noticed any changes in yourselves as a result of utilizing this support group?
Definitely, although if I can capture that into words, I don't know about that. I think, right, like it's the best way that I can think of to describe that is like it's almost like holding a heavy backpack that I didn't realize I was holding until I got to put it down. And so being in this group and having a space to discuss things that like I didn't realize I wanted to discuss really until I got a chance to, or I think even just now hearing Annabel, your introduction to yourself and talking about the zodiac signs, I was like, it made me think back of my own stories and what my parents would say about different zodiac signs and everything like that. And so just it's hard to capture really, but I definitely have noticed changes.
I think what's happened is I've gotten a bit braver and speak up when I see things that needs correction. And an example is several years ago, there was a U of R, there was a newsletter called Encompass, and it was celebrating Women's History Month. And there were different ethnic groups and women of different ethnic groups and races were acknowledged, which was great, but unfortunately, no Asian American women were. So we met with the people who were involved in writing the newsletter and so forth. And it was an emotional discussion simply because from our end, we were feeling hurt. From their end, they were feeling mortified. The good news was that it was a really wonderful, productive conversation. And the outcome was very, very positive with really good resolution. And so that's just kind of an example of how, as each of us are having more of a voice, we can make more positive and powerful changes in that way.
Thank you, Marie. And just reminds me, I think part of stereotype is that we're some sort of invisible minority. And I feel like part of this space has helped me realize that, again, getting back to my Asian identity, and clearly I'm Asian, and owning that and sort of celebrating that. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. It seems like most of these questions have been dealing with the past and how we got here. So we'll just kind of look forward now with the next few questions. What is your vision for this group for the future?
So I think we're hoping to continue to grow and to connect, increase our visibility, right? And so some of the things that we've participated in the past, right, is attending the Upstate AAPI Summit. There was a fair on Asian American artists. We've also had been working on a directory of businesses, restaurants that support local AAPI owned. And I think having that resources for new employees is part of our goals, or new students, new residents, that kind of thing. Yeah, anything else you want to?
We have a few slides to show, so Amanda is going to flip through them. Also, being more involved with just advocacy. There's a goals slide that I believe we have. So here are some of the other slides. So here are some of the goals that just kind of dovetail into our vision. We have a variety of goals. And what am I trying to say? Obviously, all four of us can't do this. Certainly, we're looking to allies and other supports to join us. We're looking forward to collaborating with other affinity groups and really try to be in line with the university's vision of meeting their objectives for DEI, just putting it in succinctly like that. So a lot of the goals that you see here are in alignment with the university's vision.
Thank you. So we have two questions that kind of dovetail into one another, one that just came in as well. So you mentioned allies, so how can we as allies support your goals and the university? But someone just wrote in, how can we as individuals and as a department do better?
Well, to first say, allyship is really important, and that I think a lot of what we talked about, this group growing organically, came from allies who recognized maybe there was a friend or colleague or employee who might benefit from our support and reached out to us. And so that is a way to kind of connect on that level. And as folks have mentioned, really thinking about representation at leadership levels is really also a key part of maybe getting the support and advocacy and to help us reach our goals too.
I think on an individual level, it's important to consider that what we call AANHPI is an incredibly large and diverse group with a variety of life experiences. So they're recognizing that there's no universal AANHPI perspective or experience, I think is an important step in challenging some misheld beliefs too.
Another way to show support as allies is that whenever we have events and things like that, bring a friend and come join us. We love to share. We also love to learn. That would be a wonderful thing. The other thing that I wanted to add is that I have some allies in my my coworkers who are wonderful friends, and we would talk about how they felt like they were afraid to bring something up because they were going to say something wrong, and they would inadvertently offend. And I would say to them, you know what, as long as your intentions are good, I'm not going to jump down your throat if you happen to not know something in particular about my Asian background or whatever. You know, what's most important is really having the sincere interest and having an open heart and an open mind. Again, with the goal of basically what we're talking about here is acceptance and being non-judgmental of all people. And so that's why I say, you know, don't worry if you get it wrong. I'm not going to jump down your throat. It's the intent, in my opinion, that matters most to me.
Thank you. Our next question, based on your journey so far, what words of wisdom do you have for those who want to create a support and/or affinity group?
It's a long process. It's a long process, and don't give up. There are many times where, and you guys can chime in, where we go, oh my God, this seems so slow, we're hitting roadblocks, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And it helps when we go to other functions in the community and other AANHPI associations. In Rochester, they say the same thing, and they've been at it for 20 years. So that's my word of wisdom, is like, whatever you want to start, even if it's not an affinity group, but whatever, just don't give up. Just keep plugging away, use your allies, use your resources. That's what's really going to keep your stamina going.
I guess I will add in that, you know, it always comes down to time and energy, which we never have enough of. But I have found that if it's important to you and you prioritize it, you will make the time and energy for it. So take some time to think about, you know, how much this really means to you, what your goals are, and if it matches, prioritize what you want, what you need to do. So I guess that's a general life goal recommendation too.
Yeah, I think I would echo that, right? Persistence and patience. This has been a really long journey for all of us. And I think what has kept me going is my connection to the folks here sitting up here with me, and the experiences that we've had along the way that just fill my cup back up, right, and give me more to pour back in.
Yeah, just echoing what folks say as well, being patient. I think often those that are involved in affinity groups want things to go fast, to get things done, and it's very easy to get yourself burnt out doing this sort of work. So echoing what folks have said, just having patience for yourself is vital.
Thank you. What negative feedback have you received, if any, in starting this group?
Back regarding affinity group, support group?
So it doesn't specify?
Oh, it doesn't specify?
If there hasn't been any negative, then that's great.
Not to our faces, anyway.
I think that's what I was about to say in terms of, I don't know that we've gotten any direct feedback, but it does feel sometimes that the barriers that we encounter act as almost like indirect feedback of, is it really worth it for us to keep pushing for this? Like, are we asking for too much? I think those are definitely themes that come up that like can feel discouraging when we're advocating and doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere.
Thank you. We've gotten through a lot of the questions that were online and pre-prepared. I want to open it up to anyone here that has a question. Feel free to raise your hand, and we have someone that'll run a mic over to you.
Thank you all for sharing your stories and your process in developing this group. It really just follows after your last statement. What were some of the barriers that you encountered? Was it like systems barriers? Was it some of the practical, like where can we meet barriers? If you could talk a little bit about that process and what were some strategies you used to navigate those?
I think, okay, barriers, they're all different kinds. I think a lot of it has to do with time. Like we're all four of us are members of DICE, and we're kind of used to lunch meetings. So a barrier for us was really trying to find the time to meet consistently. And we found that some of the barriers for other folks who wanted to join either the support group or be involved with some of our affinity group meetings or task group meetings was trying to find a time because everybody is just incredibly busy. Another barrier is just kind of how can we get our word out to the people in power at the university who can institute change? We haven't quite figured that one out yet. Hence our meetings, several meetings with OEI. But that's kind of like a gigantic, to me, mountain barrier. You know, it's like how to reach the ivory tower. And are they even watching, you know? So that's what I can think of.
Yeah, related to what Marie said about time, I think, as Annabel said, this originally was not too intended as something that was recurring. It was as people felt they needed support. But we also have full-time positions outside of our role in this AANHPI group, and related to time and how do we address burnout. That is also a lot of feedback that we hear from other groups that are doing this work as well. That there's a lot of momentum starting, but eventually kind of feels like, is this, I think as Marie said, like, is this worth the effort that we're putting in?
Yes, it's definitely a long-term commitment here, and for important reasons. I will also add in that we're a very large university. We're not reaching everybody. Not everybody, maybe you didn't even know we existed before this. And we tend to sort of focus on electronic means of communications and outreach, which doesn't really always, the best way to reach some of our maybe staff members who are not faculty and not working in the Department of Psychiatry. And so how can we get the word out there a little bit more effectively?
Yeah, I think trying to be creative, right? So as I mentioned, we often meet on Zoom, right? But that often requires a desk job to be able to engage in that way. We've also been trying to be creative in terms of how to connect with our community. And being creative about if we can get funding for that, right? Like we have all these grand ideas of what we would like to try, and implementing them and in a sustainable way is something that we're still exploring.
Thank you. I have someone from leadership at the university level is asking the question, hello, what would you want leadership at URMC to know about you? What support from leadership would look like to you? Thank you.
I'm like blabbing today. One of the things that we talked about a lot is how, like Amanda said, we work full-time. We have a lot of lunch meetings. This is a commitment that we've done outside of our work. And if we want our affinity group to grow, which we do, we want to be able to recruit folks who are going to feel like they're going to be compensated in some way, whether it's given protective time, whether it's, and that's how administration can really help us and also other affinity groups as well, is giving us the time to be able to do this work that's going to positively impact the university as a whole, offer financial assistance with certain programs and events that again meets the goal of the university. So those are kind of, again, the things that I think of at the top of my head.
Yeah, some examples that I can think of. So May is Asian American Heritage Month, right? And so every year we try to think of things that we would like to do for that. And we've talked about like being able to do a fair or have vendors or different things like that. And so I think it would be incredible if we could make that happen. And we struggle, I think, like in our capacity of being able to meet like once or twice a month on our lunch breaks to pull something together. I think another dream of mine would be to be able to, like, there's a lot of events all throughout the university that needs to be catered. And so to be able to kind of build connections where the catering could be from AAPI-owned restaurants, local restaurants, to both increase that visibility and variety would be amazing.
We have like a 3-page proposal for developing an affinity group at the university level, so please email us. We're happy to meet and share this proposal.
And I will share the person's name once we conclude.
Thank you.
And any other questions in the auditorium? Just raise your hand and the mic will be brought over.
I also want to thank you for sharing your stories. It's really powerful to get to know each one of you and the individual story, beyond culture and race, just listening to, the story behind the person sitting there is really powerful and beautiful. So I wish we could do that more and get to know each other on a personal level like that, on a human level like that more. So thank you for that. And from that also, I was able to see a theme of belonging, of identity, of struggles with like, who are we as an individual and where do we belong? And that's something that's very universal and that we share, all of us together. So thank you for that. And a question, where was that Thai place that you saw?
Seasonings Thai Bistro at 12 Corners. It's really good. Thank you so much for that. And, you know, this university is so diverse. And wouldn't it be great just to have an international dinner party and we all just get to know each other, our culture, our stories, the food. I mean, if we could just have like an international festival or something, because there's thousands of interesting people from all over the world who come here, and we're not taking enough advantage of that. And so thank you for bringing that up.
White Swan dim sum. I want to thank you for sharing that and to say that it's kind of a personal risk for us to come up here and share those level of private thoughts. And I think we agreed that we were able to do this because we felt like this would be a psychologically safe place to do so. So yes, thank you for listening to us.
We have another question that's come in. Do you have non-AAPI members in your group? Do you think that would be beneficial for allyship or not so, in the sense that it could change the structure and dynamic of the group?
Come on over.
That's it. Okay. And with that, I'll just share some of the comments that have come in. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your stories and experiences. You are all an inspiration to me. Marie, Annabel, Chen, and Amanda, thank you thank you all for sharing your individual and collective stories and experiences. It is truly a gift. Your presence emphasizes the importance of representation and relationships as drivers of psychological safety and inclusion. Much love to y'all as you continue on this important journey for yourselves and for the institution. And on that note, we'd like to, please join me in a round of applause for our speakers today. Any parting words? I see Amanda has the mic.
Oh, just thank you for having us and giving us a space to chat.
Thank you so much, and please feel free to grab a snack on your way out.
And also, if you have questions about our group, feel free to stop by and chat with us.
Khop khun ka, which means thank you in Thai.
Thank you all.